morning everybody. Today I'm going to show you two activities for Year 1 children which focus on finding a half of a set of objects. You will notice that I do not use half as a fraction. I write the word half in this format because Year 1 children will not have been introduced to half as a fraction. Both of these activities require little setup. I do recommend that an adult could help to set up, especially for the first activity, as there is a bit of cutting out required. But other than that, they are easy to play and involve using equipment that you can find around the house. I hope you find them useful. Okay, so for our first activity, I have drawn the capital letter W 4 times, and the idea is going to be that you would ask a child to pick their favourite letter, a letter that's special to them and that has some significance to them. So for me, W is the first letter of my surname. I have chosen this letter because it has an even number of squares, which is very helpful when we are finding half. You will notice that all the items I am using today use even numbers for this reason. So first you can tell them to start by counting the amount of squares that are used in the letter W. I have put some blue tack just to speed this up a little bit, and you would ask the child to maybe count the squares whilst placing squares on top, and you will see why in a second. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So we know that 14 is an even number. We could talk about the fact that 14 appears in the 2 times table. So then I would encourage you to ask your child to lift each square off and put them into 2 separate groups. We are using 2 separate groups because we are dividing by 2 when we find 1/2. And this is really important for the child to understand. So 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and they could do this as fast or as slowly as they desire until they have picked all the pieces off the first letter. So now we can see that we have 2 clear separate groups. The next thing would be to count how many squares are in each group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's check the other group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here we could describe or discuss the fact that half of 14 must be 7 because there are 7 squares here and 7 squares here. You could also discuss the fact that the groups are equal, and when we find half of an object, the 2 groups have to be equal. So the next part of the activity is using 2 coloured pens. So I have 2 felt tips here, ideally of a different colour to stand out, and I would ask the child to colour each square in one group using the same colour. For example, I'm using pink here. I'm sure your child or children could do a much neater job, but just to give you an idea, now I'm going to use some yellow to contrast from the pink. And then you can ask the children to explore placing these 14 squares back onto the letter now that we know that half of them have been coloured in pink and half of them have been coloured in yellow, and explore the different designs. Now this is why I have drawn 3 more versions of the same letter, so they can experiment with the layout. So they could just put all the pink ones together, for example, like this. And then they might like to keep the colours separate and near each other. And then they might like to put the yellow ones similarly touching. However, the interesting conversation that could arise here is the fact that there is no right or wrong answer. The layout could be completely different. So I have some extra squares that are using the same colours that I have cut out and coloured from earlier on, and I could experiment using different patterns as long as I still use 7 yellow and 7 pink squares. So this time I want to be a little bit more adventurous and mix up the pattern a bit more. So you can see here the arrangement is more random. However, I am still using half of 14 squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can only use one more yellow square. And then when I check the pink squares, I should also have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we know this is correct. They could have a go at doing 4 different patterns and investigating the variety of layouts. And I think they'd find this really enjoyable. Okay, moving on to my second activity to focus on finding a half. This activity uses boxes or containers that I found from around my house. I'm sure you could find some too. I've also used some sparkly gift bags because inside these containers and bags are some objects. So the same object is inside a bag, and again I've used even numbers of objects because if we are finding half, we cannot use odd objects for Year 1 children, and the children will not know what objects lie inside which bags. So this could be a 2-player game. Player 1 could choose any of the containers and then they open them up. So I'm going to have a look inside this container, and here we have some bottle tops. Empty the whole container out and see how many there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then the child would investigate finding half of this amount of bottle tops. Here you can see I've already split them into 2 groups. Make that a bit clearer, and we can see that half of 10 is 5 because there are 5 bottle tops in each row. Then player 2 would have a go. They might opt for the sparkly green bag. In here we have bouncy balls. We would count how many there are altogether, just lay them out a bit clearer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, they would split these into 2 equal groups. So we can see that these groups are now equal. We have 3 bouncy balls here and 3 bouncy balls here. So half of 6 is 3. The aim of this game is for the players to carry on and keep investigating the contents of the bags until their halves match. So player 1 here found half of 10, which is 5, and player 2 found half of 6, which is 3. So sadly 5 and 3 don't match, but they can keep on playing until they find 2 halves that do match, and that is when the game will end. For this to work, when you are filling the containers or the bags, it's really important to make sure that 2 of them at least have the same number of even objects inside. So I'll just have one more quick go to show you some other examples. So in this container here, there are some beads, colourful ones. Again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You could discuss, how do we find half of 10? Well, we can split them into 2 equal groups. And actually at this point the players will recognise that this representation matches this representation, just using different objects, and the game is then won. And they are my 2 activities. I hope you found them useful. As you can see, I have chosen to use colourful objects to appeal to the Year 1 children. I think they'll find these really engaging, and I hope you find these ideas useful. Please do let us know if you intend to use either of these 2 activities in the coming days or coming weeks. And remember that you can find some guidance information on how to play these two activities over on the Classroom Secrets website. See you next week!